Good morning and welcome to our daily devotional from Pilgrim Congregational Church. I'm Patrick Horn, and this morning we're going to look into 1 John chapter 4. We have been reading and studying this week from this chapter, a fairly long passage throughout the week from verse 7 through verse 21. And this morning, I would like for us to focus on starting with the second half of verse 16, 16b, and going through the end of 18. So 16b, 17, and 18. This is 1 John chapter 4. As I've mentioned before this week, we do not have a lot of historical context for this epistle. I think that puts a lot of responsibility upon us to depend upon God's Spirit to interpret this in ways that will be helpful to us and help us to mature spiritually. There is this passage, along with 1 Corinthians chapter 13, is one of the most powerful passages on the subject of love. And we're going to look at love again. In fact, the first phrase of our of 16b that we're going to start with today is God is love. So let's read 1 John 4, 16b, that is starting with the second half of verse 16 through 18. God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. Love has been perfected among us in this, that we may have boldness on the day of judgment, because as he is, so are we in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, for fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not reached perfection in love. Well, you recognize there a phrase that many of us like to repeat, and that is this, that perfect love casts out fear. We know in several passages in the New Testament that when love is talked about, it is emphasized that that love does not have a spirit of fear, and we find that here as well. This is particularly important in this context because in verse 17, notice that there's a reference to the day of judgment, which is a reference to apocalyptic literature. That is a reference to the fact that we will all be judged, or in fact are all judged. And the apocalyptic element is that I think is that in our lives there will be times that are that may be terrifying and horrifying, and in which it will be very difficult for us to respond in love and in peace. And the elder here in 1 John 4 is saying that when those times come, because of love, we can have boldness, we can be confident, and not be fearful, not be filled with worry or with fear about what may happen to our loved ones or even to ourselves, but that we can act and live with confidence, because there's no reason for such fear when we are living in love. Also related to this, of course, is the idea that the day of judgment is punishment. And this passage would seem to discourage looking at the day of judgment as somehow a day of punishment, and that we should not live in fear about that day, but again, to live in love, and that it is in fact love that gives us the power and the confidence to do so. There's much more that could be said here. I think there's a lot to be said about the nature of love that keeps us from being fearful. What is it about love that keeps us from being afraid? I think one reason that love does not involve fear is that love really is an extension of ourselves. It's a risking of ourselves in the world with what lies around us, and there's no fear in that risking. If we are fearful, then we will refrain or restrict our love. And so I think that's one reason there's this emphasis on the fact that love cannot be filled with fear. Let's close with this word from W.E. Orchard, this prayer. O God, Mother and Father of us all, breathe upon us now thine hallowed calm. Lift the burden from our hearts, soothe the anxieties of our minds, and send peace into our souls. Forgive the disorder, the fever, the worry, the vain purpose of our lives. We've made haste as those who believe not. We've been desperate as those who lead a forlorn hope. We have not trusted in thee who workest evermore. We have spent our days contrary to thy plainest laws. Our eyes have been fixed to earth and rarely lifted to the hills. We've not silenced ourselves to hear, nor been patient to understand. We've been fretful as children, comfortless as those who never knew thee. We have spent our strength on things that do not profit and labored for the bread that perisheth, while thy free and glorious gifts have lain near to us, unappropriated and often spurned. Help us now to stand a while in the shelter of thy shadowing wings and to be still, to look out again upon life with new vision that we may understand, to wait for the revelation of thy will that shall make us calm and strong. Amen. Thank you for joining me this morning from Pilgrim Congregational Church. I'm very pleased to have you this morning. I'm Patrick Horn, and I hope you have a very good day. Goodbye.